Hi, this is Richard Jacobs from MyDUIAttorney.org. I'm here today with Carl Spector. He's both a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney operating in New Jersey and New York. Welcome, Mr. Spector.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you, Richard?
Good. Thanks for taking the time to interview. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, without delay, let's just get right into the questions.
Sure.
So my first one is, what made you choose to handle DUI cases, and what motivates you to be a criminal defense attorney in general?
I find that a lot of people simply don't understand their rights. And with a little bit of information from me and some education from me, they can take back the control that they lose by being arrested, in that being able to make a really informed decision when it comes time to make an important decision in their case. And quite frankly, aid in their defense. And you find that people become empowered by that. And I enjoy the opportunity to educate people and work with them on their cases. The prosecutor has the police, they have investigators, they have a lot of resources behind them. When you're accused of a crime or a DWI or even a traffic infraction, you have lots of rights, but not necessarily lots of resources. I
Hmm.
consider myself one of those resources.
Okay.
With regard to DWIs or DUIs, they are one of the reasons I like doing those cases. Is they're very complicated, they're very complex. There's a lot of science involved. There's a lot of law involved. There's a lot of rights to protect, and I like to dig my teeth into those and really get down to where I can really protect my clients' rights and help them through a disposition, if they have to take a disposition, that is most favorable to them, by exploring all of the avenues in the case.
Okay. And I mentioned this briefly, but you're both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. So when you're there acting as a prosecutor, I don't know, it must be very hard to separate the two. I mean, you must be very good at it, but do you ever feel, while you're being a prosecutor, any twinges of wanting to defend a person or vice versa when you're defending them?
That's a very good question, Richard. And let me first give you a little bit of the background. Right now, I'm a criminal defense attorney in both New York and New Jersey. My background is 6 years as a prosecutor, as an assistant district attorney in Bronx County. For the last 2 years and some odd months, almost 2.5 years, I've been a municipal prosecutor in a large Bergen County town, and that's what you're referring to.
Okay.
And right, that's what we talked about.
Right.
And I find that the act of being a current prosecutor gives me much more understanding of the current state of the law, and to benefit my clients on a everyday basis, because I realize some of the things that are going on behind the scenes in as a prosecutor in one of the towns of Bergen County.
Okay. So my next question is there a typical DWI defendant circumstance? Do you have more first-time offenders? Are there more men than women or older people? Are there any commonalities you see?
That's a good question also, Richard. I see a lot more first offenders in my practice, and I think generally the statistics would bear out there's more first offenders. You'd hope that people would learn their lesson and not become second and third and so on. So
Right.
you see a lot more first offenders. You see probably more men than women. And but other than that, it's a very cross section, very broad cross section of people that do get involved in this unfortunate circumstance. Um, and over the period of years, I think it's probably growing in the areas where other parts of the society are growing. So probably more women now than there were 10 years ago.
Okay.
And probably with the age groups in the past, it's probably mostly younger people. There's much more of a broad section now.
Okay.
Uh, if,
And so in all this time, how many cases have you handled? I mean, your estimate, and in what time period?
it's a little hard to say. I was a prosecutor for 6 years, from 1986 to 1992 as a prosecutor. I must have handled several hundred DWIs as a prosecutor then,
Okay.
between 1992 and now. I've been a criminal defense attorney. I have probably handled several more hundred.
Okay.
And as a municipal prosecutor, I do prosecute probably between 60 and 70 a year. So
Okay.
that adds up quite a bit. And I have to handle every single one of those. And let me tell you something, every single DWI is individual. They all have their different set of facts and circumstances. Everybody has a different background, and every single case is different.
Hmm.
And that needs to be stressed to everyone that's got a case, because not every case is the same. Therefore, they need to be analyzed completely.
So you're saying in DWI more so than a lot of other areas, the cases are so complex and so unique that it's just important to be aware of that fact. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And you need to speak to somebody who understands the subtleties between being pulled over because of a traffic infraction, or being involved in a checkpoint.
Okay.
There's a whole host of different reasons why someone can be pulled over, and the lawyer needs to appreciate that.
I guess, yeah, what that would tell me is someone that, hopefully will never have to deal with it, but if I did have to deal with it, that would tell me that I definitely need a lawyer's help because, again, it's complex. It's so different every time. What hope would I have of really being able to defend myself to the fullest? So it'd be better to get someone that specializes in it. That's what I take away from what you're saying.
You need to have an attorney who has dealt with these cases on a regular basis,
Okay.
and someone who understands the way the law changes. And there's been some significant changes in the law just over the last 12 months.
Oh, can you talk about those, the recent changes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of the biggest changes in the law over the last 12 months, it involves the installation of an interlock device, or what they call an ignition interlock device, for anybody who's convicted in the state of New York for a DWI. And that's why it becomes very important to analyze the case that you're charged with, to try to avoid a conviction to driving while intoxicated in New York, so that you don't have to have that ignition interlock. In the state of New Jersey, the law changed in January of 2009 to require an interlock device for anyone who has a alcohol test reading, which is the breath reading, over a 1.5 or higher. And those are very significant changes. A lot of people don't understand them, and we like to educate our clients and explain everything to them so they know going in what the challenges are.
Okay. My next question is, again, it's about commonalities. Of the clients that you've talked to, or the potentials, do a lot more come close to that 0.08 limit, or a lot more people have higher blood alcohol levels? Is there any commonality there?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. For the run-of-the-mill case, and there is no such thing as a run-of-the-mill case, but for the average case, the readings probably range from under a 0.08, which is the legal limit, to somewhere around a 0.15. If your alcohol test reading or your breathalyzer reading is above a 0.15, those are much more rare cases that come through this system, and for a whole host of reasons, and some of which that we can go into a little bit later.
Okay.
So most of the readings are probably just below 0.08, which is the legal limit, to somewhere just above 0.14.
Okay. And the reason I ask is that DWI is also called drunk driving, and I think the public has a perception that people that drive drunk are drunk. And again, I know this plays into, are you drunk at 0.08 or 0.10 or 0.12, but that's why I asked this question, because I wonder, it seems like the majority of people are over the limit, but I wonder if that means that they're drunk. And again, that can lead into a whole host of other issues, but that's why I ask.
Well, it's a good inquiry, because a lot of people even present that to me. I wasn't drunk. How did I get a DWI or a DUI? That's because it's a scientific test, not based on whether or not you feel drunk. And that's really where the subtlety comes in. But however, the police are responsible for taking field sobriety tests, which do give them indicators or marks on for regular people, and whether or not they can walk a straight line or do the alphabet correctly and do things that quote drunk person would have difficulty with, or just someone who's impaired by alcohol.
Okay. And then in the cases you see, are you starting to see more drug DUIs, or is it still mostly alcohol?
There are a percentage, not a large percentage, of people with DWIs or DUIs because of drugs. There's a certain percentage which are for marijuana, and
Okay.
there's a certain percentage for cocaine. And now we're starting to see more of the DWIs that pertain to Ambien and other prescription drugs,
Hmm.
which become very complicated, mostly for the prosecutor. Remember, the burden's on them to prove, if they can, someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay.
We're seeing more and more of the prescription drug issues that come up in urine and blood.
So I guess in the scale that prescription drugs may be the most tricky to defend, or maybe the easiest, and then maybe illegal drugs after that, and then alcohol, or is there really no such order? It depends on the case.
It depends on the case. Remember that being under the influence of a prescription drug is not necessarily illegal. The question is impairment,
Okay.
whether or not the prosecutor can prove that you were impaired at the time. So I would say that alcohol is the most common and probably the easiest for the prosecutor because they're most familiar with it. What they're not familiar with, it's not easy for them.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.